then you have the clapper, and that's because the sound and the camera are completely independent. So you need something that you can see on the camera and hear on the soundtrack to synchronize the two. And afterward, the director would say, in Norwegian, varsågod. Så vidare. Har vi det? Thank you. Today's subject, adapting quote templates. This will be about 1/2 PowerPoint and 1/2 hands-on, where you can ask questions and I'll try to adapt my templates to your needs. And also collect wishes for what we can't do, because in all probability there is something you want that we haven't foreseen. I'll reuse a slide from the last session, brief history of document production. The idea behind document production in SuperOffice has always been conceptually very simple. You wish to write a document, and 20 years on, you still wish to write a document. And part of the document is predictable. It's always the same. It's a template. Part of the document is predictable because you have told the system about the recipient, the customer, or the prospect you are going to write to. So that's not in the template, it's in the database. And part of the document is not predictable. That's what you're going to say. That you have to do yourself. But we can help you with the first two parts. We can keep the template, and we can move data from the database into the template to produce something that you can then go on and edit. The concept is deceptively simple. How hard can it be? And frankly, it's terrible. Truly. For those of you who have, any appreciation for code, you will see that horrible things happening here. Because there are so many things to take into account. Like in the Czech version of Word, things were different. In the Polish version of Word, things were different. Not quite the same as Czech. Then, a few years ago, Word changed to open XML formats. Bravo, fantastic. Now we have the mess on the right-hand side. Where it says total amount, but the word amount is split between two runs. Seriously? How are we going to handle that? We do. And it works very well. And we have supported more word processors than just about anyone else. Because one of the other ideas underlying SuperOffice is freedom of choice. Do you want to use Word? Fine. If you don't want to use Word, we'll bend over to support whatever is reasonably popular. And Unicode came along, and so on and so on. But one big limitation that we have all the time is what I call direct substitution only. So you put in a tag, we substitute a value for the tag to get something valuable. What we cannot do, and have never done, is to kind of iterate over things and mass produce, repeat a section. And when we came to quote, we knew ahead of time that that was a fundamental assumption that we had to leave behind. Because a quote template that has the correct number of lines predefined is not a practical way to do it. I wouldn't be here telling you about it if we had chosen that path. I would just be too embarrassing. So what we wanted to produce is this. And obviously, with all kinds of formatting and stuff. And so we thought, how are we going to do this? Are we finally having to understand this? No. It turns out there are people who make a living from understanding Word outside of Microsoft even. I'm sure there are a lot of people inside of Microsoft who do that. There's a bunch at Google as well because Google is able to import and export documents. There's a bunch at OpenOffice, which at some point wasn't open enough, so they split into two, which unfortunately is the kind of thing that happens to open source projects. You know, your open source is not open enough, so now it's my source, and I'm opening it, but in a different way. And so we went with a closed source. We can actually buy the source code if we ever need it. We just have to give them a lot of money. We haven't needed it. This is a product, it's actually a family of products, which have at their common core that they understand and manipulate Microsoft Office file formats and files. And when they say high fidelity rendering engine, they're not kidding. When they say high fidelity imports and exports, they're also not kidding. This is what these people do. So they do it well. And the whole point is we can read any one of these formats. We get an object model in memory which we can manipulate. And then we can export it as something. So we can push it out as PDF. We could save it back as a doc file. I'm going to tell you a little bit of why we don't do that, but we could. In version 7.5, this is the first time we are using this engine. We're using it for one purpose only, which is to generate those documents that contain quote lines. A word on terminology. I keep saying quote lines because that's what it was called until, I think, late September, when it changed to product lines. Because supposedly, product lines is what everybody else says, and quote lines was what SuperOffice R&D was calling it. Is that correct, by the way? Yes, good. Then I'll try to say product lines from now on, but everywhere in the code it says quote lines. It was a bit too late to rename all the classes, all the files, all the variables, everything. So we are using this for documents where we are generating product lines. My guess is that in the future we are going to use it more and more. But right now, that's the only place we need this engine. So our existing substitution engine lives. It's the same as always. It's actually been extended because we have lots and lots of new fields, new tables with quote. So we have put in a bunch of new tags. And those documents that are about product lines, they are actually sent through both engines, so you can use both kinds of tags. They don't cover the exact same areas. So sometimes you need one, sometimes you need the other. In a quote document, you can mix both. Our own engine uses substitution tags with greater than, less than signs to delimit them. Unfortunately, we are past the days of fixed length format. If you go back 10 years, a Word file was a binary fixed length database. And if we inserted a byte, it would break totally. So you had to make your tags long enough so that we could actually fit the substituted value in there. And then we would add something called a non-visual space, which is a character that doesn't take up any room to collapse it. Fortunately, we don't have to do that. That was one of the advantages of going to the XML format. Suppose uses a slightly different way of specifying the tags, which is they use word merge fields. As you probably know, you can have a huge number of different fields in Word. Again, if you go way back, those used to be codes that you could see in the text. And to a certain extent, you still can. There are word fields saying, this is the anchor of a cross-reference. Word fields saying, this is a cross-reference. referring to some other place, insert table of contents here, and so on and so on. And Word has its own mail merge functionality, and inside that functionality is something called a merge field. And that is what we use to create those quote documents. So instead of doing less than, blah, 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 greater than, you insert a merge field, which in the Word file looks quite similar, except it has kind of double chevron at the beginning and end. And between those delimiters, you see the name of the field, and that is the reference to what you want to put in there. And what you can do in Word is you directly in the text, you simply mark that text and put in something else. Then you rerun your template and you get frustrated because it's still showing the old value. And that is because it's the actual field name which is the significant thing, not what's shown in the outer text. And I'm saying this because otherwise you're going to waste a few minutes discovering that. And I also found that putting the function insert field into the bar up here also saves me a lot of clicking. In the existing engine, there is, when we start the merge process, we have the template, we have the database data. We have one set of database data. You can think of it as one very long record which contains values for all the possible 4-letter tags. And there is one value per tag. That's it. Now obviously that is good when you are creating a letter and you want to put in one address and one signature and one whatever. It's not enough when you're going to iterate over the lines in a quote to insert all the products nicely one after the other. Then you have to have some way of saying, this is where I start iterating, this is my loop, this is the end, and maybe I want to iterate again because perhaps my document has a summary section and then it has details, and maybe the details are broken down by some kind of group. And so we have to introduce the concept of a table. Each of our, I suppose, merge tags, merge fields, logically belongs to a table, and that's simply the first part of the name, no magic there. And there are special merge fields called table start, table end, which tell the I suppose engine that this is where you start iterating, and this is the bottom. And everything between then gets repeated for every record in that table. And you can nest tables, just like you can nest political leaders in the old Soviet Union. And I should say that this set of dolls was actually on sale in 1991, when there was the coup attempt against Gorbachev. And by chance I was there. I arrived on Sunday, tanks were in the street on Monday, revolution ended on Friday, and we went home on Saturday. And around Thursday, they were selling these with Boris Yeltsin on the outside of Gorbachev. That was actually a few days before the announcement when Gorbachev actually got shoved out, effectively. In quote, we have a hierarchy of 4 tables. You have the quote level. In the quote level, there is one row, and it contains all the merge fields that relate to the quote and the current quote version. If you remember from Erik's presentation, there is always one version of the quote, which is the current one you're editing. That's the latest one, by definition. And it contains things like reference to the sale, it contains the addresses, payment terms, delivery terms, and so on. And there's one of each. Because when you're sending an offer, you are sending an offer which is one particular version. Inside of that, the alternative record. If you have turned on in the sales type that you can have multiple alternatives per quote, then there can be multiple records in the alternative table, one for each alternative. And inside of alternative, you have the lines. Each alternative contains its product lines. They do not mix across, obviously. And then there's a level wedged in between alternative and line called group, which is a way of grouping the product lines within an alternative, which is something you can do if it makes sense. You can drop it if it doesn't make sense. And it's the template that contains grouping or not. So that's not a property of the quote or the alternative or any particular product. It's something you set up in the template, which makes it quite flexible. And it also means that salespeople don't have to think about grouping. If the templates are set up correctly and make sense, then it will just happen automatically. We could have continued the tradition of 4-letter tags. I mean, if you have 26 letters, 10 digits, that's 36, then you have the question mark, that's 37. 37 to the 4th power is quite a lot. So you have a huge number of possible combinations, and we could have gone on with that. And we thought, no, let's try to make it readable instead. Now, can you remember what COZI means? Or one of the lesser known tags? I mean, we do have 4-letter tags for most of the quote stuff, if you want to use them. But in here, we have opted for a more readable format. You have the table name, then you have a slash, then you have the field name, and then optionally, you have a colon and some kind of modifier format. Every field has a table name, every field has a field name. Some fields, the number fields and the date fields, have an optional format. If you don't specify a format, you get whatever is the default for your culture. Now, which culture would that be? That's the culture you choose in the send or place order dialog. And that defaults to the culture you're actually running at present, but it remembers it per quote. So if you need to make, you are running in English, but you want to make a German quote, then you select German. Then you get the German template, like Christian was telling you about. So you get the German file, hopefully you've put in one, and it's going to switch to the German culture when it's going to format the numbers and dates. And if that isn't enough, you can actually put the culture code hard-coded in the template. Table's nest, as I showed the hierarchy. So you have to say table start quote, and having done that, further on somewhere in the text, you can then say table start alternative. And having done that, you can say table start group or line. You cannot change the order. You cannot iterate over alternative first and quote inside of that. That makes no sense. Doesn't work. Group is optional. You can go directly from alternative to line. And you don't have to go all the way down. You can iterate over the alternatives to make a summary where you just pick out the sums, table end alternative, new page, table start alternative, and now we're iterating over the product lines, if you want to. Each table start needs a table end. Hopefully, if you miss any of this, you will get a reasonable error message either in the user interface or in the PDF that comes out. If you get a crash, then please tell us. Might happen. If you want to make tables in Word that produce something like this, where you start off and then repeat, this is what's in the original. So this is a two-line table. I've put in column borders in here. So it's not exactly, because if it had actually looked like this, then you would have had the column borders down here as well. But it's easier to see what is what with the borders. And you see there is a table start line at the beginning of the first cell, and there is a table end line at the end of the last cell. And this is what makes the Expose Word engine repeat everything in between. And when pressed like that, everything in between means the whole line of the table. And on this table, in the template, I used one of the predefined Word formats that has alternating styles, gray, white, which you see one instance of. There's white here, there's gray there. That property is a property of the table. So when the table is extended with multiple lines and Word then shows it, it applies the format to however many lines the table now contains. And thus, we get the alternations that we want. And you can use things like boldface and italic and font changes and so forth as you want to. Try not to change to boldface in the middle of a merge tag. You know, what would that mean? Half the word should be bold. Not going to work. I don't think it will crash, but you know, do the formatting changes outside of the merge fields.
Conditional formatting.
I haven't tried it. It should work, because what happens is everything that belongs to one line gets repeated. And then Word will evaluate the end result when it renders it. Good point. And yes, you can add images. We support 2 image types so far. One of them is the portrait thumbnail, which comes from quote. Remember that quote contains not just a quote, but everything relating to the sale, and we have extended it to reach into the customer that the sale is to, and to things like the associate who's owning the sale. So if you think putting in your portrait will help sales, go ahead and do it. I wouldn't. Right, it depends on what I'm selling. But certainly the thumbnails, and there you can see an example of one of these merge fields. Image is a special type. So there's image colon, and then it says login, and then the name of the field, quote line thumbnail, and there's nothing behind it. In the future, if we want to, say, be able to control the size of it, then we would add a colon and some magic behind that. And it's a bit up to you to tell us what is important and what isn't. And it's going to create that one. And in this case, I put in just the merge field for portrait thumbnail, one space, and then the merge field for the name of the item in one cell. And so, depending on the format of the picture, you can see that there is no flush margin. If you want a flush margin, then you can either use tabs inside the cell or put in another cell, another column. So all of that is up to you.
Do you also have something like a hyperlink in search? thumbnail, I don't think that's going to give any addition.
Hyperlinks.
Yeah.
What we produce in the end is a PDF.
Yeah.
So what I haven't tried, but I will, because the question came up yesterday as well, was what if you put in a hyperlink? There is a URL field on the product, and that's the product line. Do we have to do anything special to activate it in the PDF readers? I don't know, I will find out. Remember also that not all PDF readers will activate links by default, because the links can lead to, spooky.ru or something like that. But I definitely see the point. Yes?
Previous slide to show how we can iterate through group. Previous, but not other previous.
Okay.
You iterate through groups, can you iterate through family and such as well?
I will come to grouping afterwards. The general answer is yes. But we'll do the formatting first.
Could you specify the size of the image?
No.
By each line?
No, now you cannot. What you get is the thumbnail, and I think 75 by 75 is the standard size. We compress it to. Now if it turns out that that is important, because I have one person saying thumbnail images add no value, and another wanting to control their sizes. So please tell me, is it important? What for? And we'll put it on the list, obviously. It's pretty clear by now that creating a template is an iterative process. You cannot expect to sit down, write a template, and it all works when you're done on the first run through. Okay? So you're going to be shifting around stuff, testing out, moving borders, and so on. And it would be nice if that process could be very fast. And it turns out there is a way of testing templates very quickly. Normally, if you want to make a template for sending a quote, that would mean make a quote, click the send button, go through the dialog, get the mail, go back to and click it there, throw away the mail, open Word again with the template, and so on. It's a very long process. However, once an order has been placed, there is a button in the quote main dialog which says show confirmation. And what happens when we click that button is we take the data, we take the order confirmation template, we merge them, we store the resulting PDF in the temp directory, and we open it. And that's it. We're not saving it anywhere, but we're instantly opening it. Every time we click show confirmation, that happens. We don't cache it. And finally, it turns out you can have the template open in Word while you're doing this. So we're not running into any file locking problems as well. At least if you're using the Windows version. With web, everything is more complicated because you have to keep uploading and stuff. So using the Windows version for template development is much, much faster. So that is kind of the ideal development environment. You put in your experimental template as an order confirmation, you create a quote, and then you just click. And that's what we're going to do in a few minutes. Now, groups. The concept of alternative is to give the customer a choice. You can buy this, or you can buy that. You can buy red wine, or you can buy white wine. Or something else, beer. And they don't overlap. Each alternative is a separate universe. But sometimes we want to do grouping within an alternative. And we might want to do it to create a summary, or to just break up this huge list of stuff into wines, spirits, beers. What else do we need? Sausage. Sorry, I won't pick on you anymore. And that's where we use grouping. So to answer your question, can you group on field X? As long as X is a string valued field on the quote line, the answer is yes. But you have to choose one. And you choose it in the template, not anywhere else. So one template can group on product category. Another template can group on product family. Another template can group on one of the extra fields, one of those unassigned fields that are usually not visible, but that you have configured to mean something interesting, and that your ERP enabled code connector populates with some interesting data, which is good for grouping. So that's up to you, per template. You have to choose one field, and that choice is valid throughout that one template. You cannot change on the fly. You make the choice by putting a field, merge field that looks like this, group by, and then the name without the table prefix because it's always on the product line. You can put that anywhere in the document because it's detected during a pre-scan where we ask the I suppose word engines, do you have any merge fields? And it says yes. And okay. Group by. And having done that, oops, you get this group table that you can use if you want to. Now, if you do table start line inside of a table start group, you get those product lines that belong to the current group. Table start group starts an iteration over groups, that is values of the group field. Then you will get the lines that belong to that particular group field. If you do table start line outside of table start and group, then you get all the product lines in the alternative as if you hadn't been doing grouping. So that means you can do grouping in a template to just make a summary and then put in all the product lines as one straight list, zoop, without the groups. That's fine. Or the opposite. You'll just group product lines and that's it. Quite flexible.
Right?
Yes?
Is there a way to split the group? So have, like for instance, first one project group on that lines and then another project group with that lines, these lines? Like licenses first, then consultancy fees?
Yeah, that's, if I understand you correctly, that's what the groups are for. Like, each of your products belongs to, say, one family. Family licenses, family consultancy, family custom programming. And so when you say group by family, table start group, group name, and you get licenses, table start line, then you get all the license products. And then you get the next group, and you get all the products from that.
Perfect.
Did I answer your question?
That's fine. And the sort order of the groups?
The sort order of the groups is alphabetical. The sort order of the lines, you can again choose a field.
Put in rank, please.
Rank is one of those fields.
Rank on the group.
No,
That's important.
because, well, it depends on which group field it is. I mean, if you choose to group on extra field 1, where is the rank coming from?
No, if it's a list.
If it is a list. But the problem is, the list is coming from the quote connector. Those lists don't have a rank field. What we could do is order them in the same order as the quote connector delivers those lists. That might help. Because, just to finish it, product family, product category, product type, these three lists do not come from the SuperOffice database. They come from the quote connector. If you are using, quote, standalone, then they do come from the SuperOffice database, but that's a kind of accidental. They always come through the quote connector, and they might be different from one quote connection configuration to another. And they don't have a rank field, but we can, if it's important, we can make sure that they are sorted in the same order as the connector delivers them. That we can do. Yes?
Can you do filtering in the table or the grouping?
No.
No filtering.
No filtering. You are making a quote. It's an offer. It's in your database, in your user interface. That's what you are sending. That's the idea. Because if you start filtering, what goes into your document is not the same that's in the database.
Well, I will do filtering in some grouping to do total sums and then just show the lines for some groups of sums.
What you then do is you are moving calculation logic out of the quote management business logic and trying to put it into just making the document, which means that what's in the database and what's in the user interface and what goes into the reports is not the same as what the customer is getting in the document. I would recommend against. If you need custom calculation logic, by all means, but put it into the quote connector, because then it's reflected everywhere the same. That's the last one from you.
Yeah.
If there are too many questions, I will start requiring your drinks vouchers.
Can we merge
No.
people? Can we merge people? If you have stakeholders, let's say you're offering programmers,
Yeah.
and you want to see the people you're offering?
No. Currently, the 4 tables we support are the one. Ooh, okay, if I get all of them. No, currently the 4 tables we support are the ones I showed you. Quote, alternative, group, line. And as the wishes come in, we'll see if we can expand it. There is, if you have patience for a technical issue, is this a push or pull model? What we are doing today is push. We are generating all the data you might need for all the worksheets that are possible. And we are giving this to the Expose Word engine, saying, this is what you have, go for it. What we would like to do in the future is change it to a pull model, where we look through the template and see what is actually being asked for here. And then we generate the data set based on that. And the difference between the two is it's much easier to be flexible in the second model. You might even think of extending the system that delivers the data, which happens to be an archive provider, which is not by accident. And the grouping and the summing is also done by an archive provider, which is also not an accident, because we are planning for the future here. It would be nice to have groupings in selections, right? Counts and so on. Maybe someday we'll do that. And adding tables, adding more complex functions, relations, and so on, we actually have to wait for that. And we need to get some experience with how well it works.
Just have a quick question.
Yes,
I've used all my drink, but I hope it's okay.
that's fine.
I'm just
Okay,
wondering,
yes.
is there where to put all the questions afterwards this session? Is there a place on DevNet forum or specifically for this issue?
We should be able to create some threads on the DevNet forums, obviously. I'm going to do a blog post where I sum up this, so you can have comments off of that. So let's try that. I'll see if I can make a thread on the forums first.
Sorry, one thing about groups.
Yes.
Quotation-wise, it's commonly used that you're offering something and offering some optional lines. And you can't actually group on product family or product group shopping. It should be optional and it can come from anywhere. Did you thought of that? If you can mark some product lines, say so, these are optional and I want them default to be grouped on my quotation.
Grouped where? Together with something or
I don't know.
sitting at the bottom?
It's commonly used to do that in operating, to say, okay, this is what you want, and you can actually, optional, you can get these products too.
Well, again, since you can group on only one field, let's say you have...
I know, I understand that
yeah.
it's not possible in this way,
Oh,
because
you
you have
could-
the group on an
yeah.
existing.
But you could take one of the spare fields and put in the value optional, if it is optional, and say no value if it's not optional, and then group on that field. And then you would have first all the
Okay.
standard lines, and then you would get the heading optional, and you would get the rest of the lines. The system doesn't understand the concept of optional, but you can manipulate the text to make it look like it. So it's,
Okay, five extra fields we get, okay.
yes. And you can group on those as well. Tables in Word are nice for iterations, but actually the Expose engine will repeat whatever is in a kind of paragraph block or between table start and table end. As in this case, I said table start group, then I want the group field, so that's the value of the field that we are grouping on for each new value. Then the sum total price from the group, then the table end. There's actually a tab character between these two, and Word isn't showing it, even though I've asked it to. But you see, this is a decimal tab. It's a kind of upside down T with a little dot, which is in the paragraph format. And so what happens is that from here to here gets repeated for each group. And so I get the group field, so the actual value of the field, and then I get the sum total price. And because I'm using this kind of tab, and there is a tab character, Word will actually line them up like this for me. And you can see that this one is in italic, this one isn't. So I'm getting italic numbers. And then, after the table end group, I put in another tab, and then the alternative total price, which gives me this bottom line with the sum. So it's an alternative technique. Whether you want to use this, or you want to use table, or if you find some other construct in Word that does what you want, experiment. Dates, language. As I was saying, you can choose. And this does two things. It chooses which template file are we actually going to retrieve. So if you have uploaded or you have set up your template files, if you have set up your templates with multiple files, like Christian showed, then that will retrieve the corresponding file. And it will also set the culture, which is the .NET environment in which all the expose code is run. So that's where the actual substitution is happening, because everything becomes a string in the end. We are handling numbers as numbers and dates as dates as far as we can, but Word doesn't understand the concept of a date. It has to be string, it has to be characters. And so we have made suffixes. This is what goes after the colon on a date field or a number field. You can say short date time, short time, long date time, long time. Guess what they do? Different fonts. Number of decimals, 0 to 5. No suffix, you get whatever is the default for that culture. meaning if you go into control panel, regional settings, you look up Germany, German, you see the number formats there, the date formats, that's what you get. And these are examples. So just you see the dates. So up here we have a total price, just default 0 to 5 decimals. Looks like this. So the default for E and US is 2 decimals, comma as the thousand group, dot as the decimal separator. In Norwegian, it's slightly different, and you can see it says Monday, doesn't say Mondag. We don't care about the day in Norway. It's weekend or week. Times look more or less the same. And obviously the first thing that happened when we tried this internally was that the Swiss rebelled and told us, the German number format is not the Swiss number format. And given the number of banks in Switzerland, you cannot just ignore them. And this thing doesn't yet, at least, sub-split on subcultures within a language. You could imagine that you choose German here, and it opens up, okay, German, what kind? In Switzerland, Germany, or where else can it be? Austria, of course, obviously. So we haven't done that. Maybe in the future we will. So far, if you want to control it that precisely, there is a merge field that you can put in the template, where you say culture, colon, and then you put in one of these .NET codes. And then you will actually override whatever is in the environment, and it's going to run the merge with that particular culture code, specifically. So then you can get the Swiss. It's a little bit clunky, but it gets you there. Yes, sir?
Do you have to do the same to get English dates as in UK dates?
I believe so, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's not very okay, is it?
No. But that's easy enough to put in, I think.
Yes.
I have a question. I don't know if that's out of the scope, but what's the smart way to decide, for instance, have a company and it's in if it's in England, then make the system automatically detect what language would the quote be in? Is that possible somehow? Maybe
possible as in, could we imagine a design that does it? Yes. As in, have we done it? No. Could you do some com magic? I don't think so. What this does, this will default to the language you're running. So if you're running your SuperOffice in English, it's going to default to English. That's as far as it goes. But it's a good idea. We actually have a mapping from country to language in the system that frankly has never been used, but it's there in the database. Okay, we have 25 minutes, I believe. Is that right? Yes. Shall we try a little bit of experimentation and see how it works? Now, you've seen there's various kind of test data that you can get, and I think it's wimpy. Like socks, t-shirts, iPhones. When you're doing this, you want quality stuff, right? So I put in some test data that can actually be useful. Interesting. Let's see if hello. Okay. So as I said, go away. I've actually turned off all the wireless. Avoid that kind of thing. So I'm using the Windows client, and what I've done is I have put in a template. Yeah, minor improvements. You remember Eric said minor improvements all over the place. Remember how short that list used to be, that drop-down box? Used to be 5 lines. You were guaranteed to scroll forever. Minor improvement. It's bigger. And we've renamed all the lists so that you can make sense of the madness and find the one you're looking for. And in this case, document templates. And what I've done is I've made a template, direction outgoing, that's optional, record type document, that's important, document plugin, SOArc, as long as it works, that's fine. SOArc is the simplest one when you're doing this because you are editing the file on disk directly. There's still some advantage to doing that. Intention, don't care. Quote document type, yes, this is a quote document and it's a template for order confirmations. If I say edit, it opens up. It's fine. Now I go back to my SuperOffice. I have a quote. It doesn't have a quote main document yet. And I leave it without because I don't really care right now. I want to put in some products. So we have one of the best headlamps on the market, and it's so good that I'm going to buy 5 of them and try to ignore the pain in my wallet. And then I want some ice gear, all those. And I need some more. Since I'm going to show grouping, I need more items that come from the same group. And the interesting part here is the product family, because we're going to try to group on that. So I have those. What else do we need? Ice axe, obviously. And finally, we need a backup light. Not if the first one fails, because they don't, but you never know, you might run out of batteries. So we need a small one. That's it. Now, usually I would send and do my selling. That's not the point here. I just want to place the order, be done with it. So now I have this magic button. So every time I press show confirmation, it's going to take my template, merge it with the data here, and show the PDF. Ta-da! And so now I have my editing and experimentation environment in place. So all I have to do is, should have brought my cheat sheet. How do you know what the tags are? Well, this is how. This document is something you will find in the SOArc templates folder. when you have done a 7.5 installation. It's not installed as a template, but it's there. It was convenient place to put it. And it contains just about everything I've said in my presentation. So you can read it whenever you feel like it. There's about grouping, there's about order, and it contains examples of names and what they do of all the variables.
Mark,
Yes.
so you won't find this in the help system in SuperOffice. You will have to know that the help, the template variables, the 4-digit things are in the help file, and these are not.
Is Margrethe in the room? Yes, she is. Will this be in some kind of tech doc, help, and so on?
I put it on TechDoc on the same place I put all template variables, and TechDoc is always more embedded than the help file is, because the help file is only compiled for each main variable. So whenever they put in a new template variable in a service release, they apply TechDoc. We do not send it off to the ink, and they compile new and to mail us execution wise. So TechDoc has all updated.
Okay.
Yes? Everybody heard that? Good. And it's the same with this template, with this document, by the way. It's current as of the release, but TechDoc is going to be the reliable one. And these are actually entered as merge fields, I believe. Maybe not. This one is. So what you can see here is that when I click anywhere inside it, the whole thing becomes gray. And that's the behavior you want to see. If that doesn't happen, maybe it's just because it's on the gray background. But if you click on it and it doesn't actually turn gray, it means it's not a merge field, it's just masquerading as one, and it's not going to work, and it's just going to make you frustrated. Put in a nice color for each. So you can copy paste from here, or you can enter them on your own. We can try to take one and put into just as an easy start. So I will put in the quote thumbnail like this. You see I got a little bit of the formatting, which is always a risk when doing copy-paste. So I'm going to retry that and say I want to merge the formatting. Now let's see. Is this still a field? It is. What does the field say? Always look at this. This is what's going to happen. And as I said, you can change this, and it's still the thing behind. Update field, aha, this is what it really is. Okay, so let's save it. Show confirmation. Ta-da! We now have thumbnails. And this is how you can quickly and efficiently work out your templates. So what's next? Shall we try what? Grouping? So then I need to put in somewhere my group field, which says I wish to group. So then we need group by, and then the name of the field. And the name of the field is any of the fields down here, which is a string without the line. Now we were using, was the family, right? I think it was the family. And the family is called, there's There's going to be a lot of scrolling. You obviously want to print out this and have it available.
Print them, product them.
Product family key.
It's the string.
Yes.
How do we know it's a string?
How do you know it's a string? TechDoc. Every
No, it's just in your document.
Yeah.
It doesn't say it's the same.
No, it doesn't. So, but you know which ones are numbers and which ones are dates, and everything else is a string.
And it says key, so I am assuming it's a
Yeah.
number.
And that's because lists are an interesting story, because a quote connector is asked, do you support the product family list? If it says yes, then we assume that the values in those fields are keys, and we will ask the connector to translate them into the corresponding list entries, and then we show the text from that list entry.
So you never can have.
But if the connector says, no, I do not support the product family list, then we say, okay, we still have the product family field, then that becomes just a string value to be used as any other string field. And that's why it's called a key, but it will always show a string, either what's in it, if it is not a list, or the list entry, if it is a list. Flexibility causes complexity. So I'm going to insert a field, and I've learned that once this dialog comes up, if you just start typing MER, then you get merge field, then I tab, and then I can say group by product family key.
Case sensitive?
Who knows? We'll find out. I frankly can't remember right now. I think most of this system is case insensitive, because that's much easier to work with. But, okay, so we have our table start alternative. Now we want to put in another table start for the group. But table start group. And I should probably put in a table end group before it's too late. Before I forget it. And it has to be inside the alternative table end, so it has to be before that one. So let's put it in right here. Right. Now we want to do something per group. Now if I just do this, what do you think happens? Well, we're going to repeat this part for each group. Let's try it. So it says details and details. I had headlamps and ice stuff.
And amount is wrong.
Hmm?
Oh yeah, that's the total amount, not the pool amount, sorry.
Yes. But this is moderately useful. So what I would like is obviously which group is it? And so that's where I would put in another heading, another field, group, group field. And let's try some formatting. Red with yellow background. Oh, that's very tasteful. We have to send lots of those. Ta-da! So now we have headlamps, we have ice. And I did the group on the list field because my data is convenient for that, because the person who put in all the products in here actually took the time to fill in that field. So product family, which is a list, we did this. But we could actually have used some other field. We could have used one of the extra fields. One of these. Or we could have grouped on supplier. Or we could have grouped on whether it's subscription or not. You put the subscription stuff in one block, everything else in another block. You can group on VAT info if law requires you to group stuff by, you know, these are 18%, these are 25%, these are 100%. Sounds like Norway. You know, our tax on cars is 100%.
There's nothing. Denmark is even worse.
Yeah, but Denmark is smaller. Okay. Within a group, you have a few other fields available which are relevant to the group that have to do with subtotals. So you have some discount amount, some total price, some VAT. So let's see how those work out. Because in our template, we are showing the alternative total price as if it was the group total, which is really not very correct. So what I wanted was the group sum total price instead. So I'll go back to my template, and then I want to edit this field, and I want to do this instead. Save, rerun, much better. This illustrates another property of the templates, which is that if you are inside one nesting level, so here the nesting level is line, because we have said table start line, so we are at the line level. This happens once for each line. You can still refer to fields that are in the nesting levels above you. Now, in this case, that was a mistake because we were inside group and we were pulling out the alternative total. But let's say you want to kind of keep in mind what is the total, what, you know, of, and then you could put in the alternative, what was it, total price. Like this. And you get something like this as a result. So you can reach out from within your nesting level to any level above. One of the things you might use it for is to get hold of the currency code. But this and there is on the quote level, topmost level, we obviously have things like, well, you have here the order comment, the payment terms, the full name, approval registered by, if you need that, if you have quotes that need approval, you can put that into the template. And you have some fields from sale. And I believe the same currency is somewhere there. Should be. It is there, I just can't see. But I chose to use one of the old-fashioned four-letter tags just to illustrate that those still work as well, and we are putting the document through both engines. So you can mix and match depending on what you want and what fits your need. I want to show one final trick, which is where does this detailed document go? Because we are generating it, giving it to you as a PDF, can't edit it, goes into the layer, zoom. To do that, I have to start over, because once a quote is sold, there is nothing more I can do with it. So I want to create a new quote. I'll put just one product into it, because one is enough. That's it. And now, when I send it, it says which template you want to use for that. Quote detailed. I'm going to show you that one. Quote detailed. Edit. It looks like, sorry, one template. Click to create the quote document. Offer. Okay, so this is the kind of main offer document, and as Erik showed you yesterday, what's going to happen is that we take this as one document, then we take the template, do all the product lines as another document, and then we are going to do this and make one PDF out of it. However, you can actually put in a merge field that says quote details in here. And you can guess what's coming. So we have an offer document, quote detailed, yes, archive as PDF only, that's fine. I'm going to send mail. It's now sent. I can go into the activities, it's there. And so it has been inserted at that point, instead of being tacked on behind. So you can control the place where the details generated document is inserted into your manually edited main offer document. If you don't say anything, we put it in behind. If you put in that merge field, you can influence where it goes. And as long as you put that merge field on its own in a paragraph, it's going to work. I don't know what happens if you put it inside a table. If it's going to expand, but I think that's relatively far-fetched. That's it. Hope you enjoyed it.